Hello, welcome back to the channel. I am very excited about this video. The two tips that I am going to share with you today have helped to revolutionize the way that I study. And this has helped me to get through medical school. Not everyone watching this might be in medical school, but I feel like these tips can definitely help you in whatever endeavor you're in right now. All right, now before I get into it, let me give you a quick idea of my study process. So it's the beginning of the semester. I sit down like everyone does and I plan out a schedule. And in that schedule, I give myself time to read through the information that is in the material and try and gather some kind of understanding. Try and familiarize myself with the topics and get an idea of what to expect. That's the main goal. That's what you need to be doing. What I recommend is when you're reading through this topic, you're gonna get to parts where your brain just goes, like, do I really care about this? Which I should not be saying because I study medicine, but it happens to me a lot. And again, I should not be saying this because I study medicine, but lists and tables are my worst nightmare. I hate them. They are atrocious because there's no context behind them. When you get to them, you think, how do I get this into my head? And it's not just that. It also, when you get paragraphs that have a bunch of numbers and letters, and it all just seems a bit meaningless. So what do we do to counteract this? That's going to come a little bit later. What I've said is when you're going through this and you reach these parts, put a star there. Don't worry about it too much now. You can read through it briefly and go, okay, yeah, it means nothing. And I will tackle this later. So now that that's done, the second part, which I think is so important, especially in medical school, is to try and find a friend that is motivated and like-minded, and you can work well with that person. It is such an important tool to have in medical school because, look, we study a lot. There's a large volume of work, and you're going to have to spend a lot of time studying. So even if you feel like you study well by yourself, you're going to get isolated. You're going to get depressed. And I promise you, sometimes it's so much easier when you're with someone else. Obviously, it has to be the right person, but sometimes when you're down, they're up, or vice versa. And it really actually helps you to stop procrastinating and push you to get through all the work. So this is my next step. I have quite a few friends that I study with. I never try more than one. I feel like if you have three people, it's a crowd. Just work with someone one-on-one. And what I'll do is I'll start going through these topics with them after I've been through them by myself. I've developed my own thought processes, my own perspectives on the topic, which is good. It's important. You need to have your own thought processes first. You have to develop your own neuronal pathways. But now it's about consolidation. Your perspectives come together, and all of a sudden you start kind of thinking of things in a way you didn't originally think. So it really helps to cement your knowledge when you are talking with someone else. And on top of that, the beauty of it is you're with someone else, so you can test each other. And you don't have to be conventional with it as well. What my friend and I would do is we would talk out the topic while reading it, getting that understanding and putting in our perspectives. And then we would get up, let the blood flow. We'd start walking, up and down the hallway. And what you can do in this time is you can start active recall. A lot of people say active recall is important, but how often do people actually use it? I feel like most of us go, yeah, this active recall. And you just continue to read your notes and hope that it just absorbs and sticks. But I promise you, you need to train your brain to not only be able to absorb the information, but to use it. So what we would do is we would walk up and down the hall, try and recite as much of the topic as possible without looking at it and asking each other a few questions. So we sit back down and we have an ugly star. One of those stars that we put early in the semester for something we're going to have to memorize. Let me get to the first gem. We are there now. You don't have to wait anymore. All right, so this is if you get a paragraph, as I've mentioned, with one of those ugly numbers, letters, and you just say like, how am I going to remember this? So I was studying pathology with a friend, and we came across Philadelphia chromosome. And I'm going to keep this very brief so I don't bore you to death. But basically, there's an ABL gene on chromosome 9 that gets translocated to chromosome 22, where there is a BCR gene. And basically, Philadelphia chromosome is where both the ABL gene and the BCR gene end up on chromosome 22. Now, that's all good and well. When you read that the first time, you go, yeah, okay. I mean, it doesn't really mean anything to me, but cool, I know it. And you move on. But that's a mistake. Because once you've gone through all the material, what are the chances that you're going to remember ABL gene and chromosome 9, 22? There's too many numbers and letters. There's not enough context. So this is the first gem. You and your friend are sitting down. You've got to this ugly star, and now you need to create a story. It has been scientifically proven that you remember things better when there is an emotional feeling attached towards it or a memory of some sort. So what you need to do is create a story. When you create a story, it's going to become a lot easier for your brain to recall the information. This, for example, we didn't want to say ABL, that's too many letters. We just shortened it to Abul, right? There's some dude named Abul. And if you look at it, it's in the name Philadelphia chromosome. So that gives us the starting point. Abul is a dude from Philadelphia. And he lives in apartment 9. But he hates his life in apartment 9 because he has shrieking neighbors and he can't get to sleep. So Abul decides he has to get out of this apartment ASAP. He has to get out. So he starts desperately looking around for anyone who's offering a space for a roommate. And he finds that apartment 22 in the same building, but far away from these noisy neighbors, is looking for someone. So he goes, he knocks on that door opens, and who is there? It's Bisser, not BCR, Bisser. So Bisser and Abul greet each other and they end up getting along. So what happens? They move in together. And all of a sudden now, you have Abul and Bisser together in apartment 22 in Philadelphia. This is a very simple example, but it's an example that can be scaled up. And your brain is going to remember it so much better than 3 letters and a random number. You will find yourself in a situation where you have a cool story attached to something that you also discuss with your friend. So when you get into the exam and someone asks you about Philadelphia chromosome, you're going to think about the conversation and the story. It's going to really help you to remember, so try it. And let me know if it works in the comments below. Let's get into the second tip and the very last tip of the video. I won't keep you too much longer. I know you've been very patient, so thank you. Right, the second thing is tackling those lists. The list that I originally spoke about, which I cannot stand. So you get a list. I've got another example for you. Vasoconstrictors of blood vessels, right? I was in physiology. I had no idea about what any of these names meant when I got there. I didn't have any of the knowledge I have now. So to me, it was a bunch of nothingness. It was 8 random words. So what I do is I make an acronym. And I think an acronym is pretty well known. But again, I still don't see that many people using it. In a best case scenario, the first letter of every single name in the stupid list will make a word by itself. And that's awesome. So what I would always do is I take the first letter of every single word in that list, I rearrange it and see if it can make a word. If it can't, then I resort to making a sentence. I construct my own sentence that is going to be easier for my brain to remember than 8 separate words. So here's the example, right? I made the sentence, Edward and Timothy are playing soccer at varsity. I purposefully picked Edward and Timothy because they are very posh, weird names that my brain would probably remember. And on top of that, I think playing soccer is something that can be your trigger word because I pictured the lines on the football constricting it, right? And that helped me to trigger vasoconstriction in the blood vessels. So if you get asked about vasoconstriction in the blood vessels, you think, I remember discussing how the lines on a ball constrict the ball, so soccer. And that means Edward and Timothy are playing soccer at varsity. All of a sudden, it doesn't feel like you've had to learn that. It's just in there. It's become a lot easier to learn. And now, for some reason, and I can't even explain the scientific reasoning behind it, it almost feels like less of a chore on your brain to list off the things when you have the first letter than just starting one by one and having no acronym or sentence behind it. And there we go. That is the second gem, guys. Please let me know if that one works for you as well in the comments below. All right, so now that we've done this, we've kind of given you the 2 tips. I'm just going to finish off my study process. So what you end up with, and just a brief consolidation, right? What you end up with is you have your first read through. And in that first read through, you've got an understanding of the topic. Put stars where you know you need to memorize. You then meet up with your friend. You discuss the topics. You do some active recall. And you make up stories and acronyms. And finally, when it's about 3 or 4 days before your exam, even 2, depends how much time you have left, you do your final read through. And in your final read through, it isn't really going to feel like studying. It's more of segmenting the topics within your brain because all of that understanding and talking that you've done has really helped to give you the knowledge. It's in there. You just have to kind of segment it and make sure you know when to apply the knowledge, and it just gives you a bit of a freshening up. That's what the point of that last read through is. And all the fine details have been packaged very nicely for you in all your stories and your acronyms, which have trigger words, and it's going to be so much easier to remember. So That is how I approach all my exams. And once I have done the 3-step process, I go into most of my exams feeling confident. And of course, there's always exam stress. I'm going to make another video at some point talking about how I deal with exam stress. But I do know within myself that if I've done these things, I've done all I can to go and pass that exam. And that's what helps me as well with the stress. But we'll get into that. So anyway, if you really enjoyed the video, then please hit a like and I will see you in the next one. Cool. Cheers. Cheers.